Hello, it's Dr. Geoffrey here again. And as I have gotten accustomed to saying, the world has changed again. I'm Dr. Geoffrey, ER doctor, crisis and split-second decisions expert. I go around the world. I teach experts how to make. I teach experts, executives, lead teams how to make split-second decisions and how to manage crisis. And during COVID, I have stepped into the leadership position of keeping the community educated with sound, reliable information. And then I recognize that there's a lot going on in the world. And no matter how you slice it, or no matter how you look at it, this is a period of time that we have never, ever experienced. Even from the pandemic of 1918, it has never been on this level. And social media, the 24-hour news even adds to the anxiety. And if I get 100 emails or texts a day, I've noticed what's happening since I've been doing this for the last 8 months. I've gotten more questions. In fact, the bulk of the questions are about mental health or issues surrounding anxiety, stress. And I just want to say that if you're feeling stressed, it's okay. If you're feeling a little anxious, it's okay. And as promised, I've gone out and I found an internationally known, world-renowned psychologist who's here just to give us some points, something that will it will help us cope. It will give us hope as we go through this period of time. I'm gonna bring her on in a minute. She is Dr. Treniece Harris. She is a Hampton grad. She also did her PhD at Howard University. From there, she went on to the Harvard Medical School as well as the Cambridge Health Alliance. Do you know how it is to get to go to Harvard Medical School? It was her international and her world-renowned work that brought her to their attention. Let me introduce you now to my Hampton alum sister, Dr. Treniece Harris. How are you today, Dr. Harris?
Hello, Dr. Geoffrey. It's very good to be with you today with my fellow Hamptonian, fellow pirate.
All right. And so we'll just give the given that you did your PhD at Howard, we won't do that Hampton Howard thing. We'll just give the HBCUs across the board a full shout out.
Absolutely. You cannot miss going to an HBU for an excellent education, which will set you up for an awesome future.
It's funny that I didn't mean to go there as I was preparing for another talk. I just wanted to, this piece of data came out. Did you know that 78% of all Black PhDs came from an HBCU? Absolutely,
I do. I'm one of them.
Hey, there you go. But moving on to a more serious matter, Dr. Harris, the COVID crisis is going rampant. It's far beyond what we ever knew. And before I start to engage, I kind of want to set it up. The current stats are that the suicide rate has dramatically increased as a result of COVID. Depression and stress are up at least 31%. Post-traumatic stress. And while we won't touch on this, because we're going to speak about people globally, those who have had COVID, they are 50% more likely to experience either anxiety, post-traumatic stress, or depression. And the sicker you are, the sicker you are, meaning if you were one of those who was in the hospital and on the vent, there's a greater likelihood you will experience the mental health issues, but it tends to go away with time. But I want to talk to you today about people like me, everyone who's just feeling and living COVID. What advice can you give us?
All right. Well, so I'd really recommend 4 basic things that really focus on the 4 pillars, of ourselves, and focus on our hearts, focus on our minds, focus on our bodies, and focus on our spirit. Right. So when we think about our heart, what we really want to do is acknowledge and address both our positive and our negative feelings. Right. In this time of COVID, we are worried about a lot of things. We're worried about our health, we're worried about our families, worried about whether to get together, when the next time we'll see each other again, worried about our jobs. But a lot of really positive things are happening as well. So what I really recommend to people is to acknowledge and address the negative feelings and the positive feelings. So slow down, take a pause, and notice how you're feeling. Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling a lot of loss? Are you worrying about things? Are you angry? Or are you excited? Is this a moment of joy, of contentment, of peace, of love? Right? But when it comes to those negative feelings, what I don't recommend is you suppressing them, because the more you suppress your feelings, if you think about your body as a vessel, right, and you suppress one feeling, that's there, and you suppress another feeling that goes on top of it, sooner or later you get full. And when people say they're fed up, it's because they're filled up. And if you suppress it too much, it is going to erupt, and usually in anger or in tearfulness. And it's usually right at the time you don't want it to happen. So what I suggest is that you acknowledge what you're feeling, whether it is positive or negative, and find a healthy way to express it. Write it down, journal, talk to someone, or do it even physically. Some people like to run it out. Some people like to walk it out. Some people like to sing it out, right? But nonetheless, get it out there and deal with it and acknowledge it and live with it, right? I know that sometimes it's hard to live with, but the second thing I would recommend, and that's really with regard to your mind, is keep your mind on the present, right? When there's a really stressful thing going on, it's our natural tendency to try to use the past to help us figure out what to do. And we try to predict in the future, what the obstacles may be, to try to prepare. But when we have a huge stressor like this, it may feel counterintuitive, but it's really more helpful to focus in the moment and to use things that we call mindfulness. And mindfulness is really about intentionally being fully engaged in the moment, in the here and now, thinking about, what am I doing right now? What am I seeing right now? What is the situation right now? How do I feel right now? And it may be, so for example, right now I'm talking to you. I can see that beautiful Hampton sweatshirt. I can smell the plant next to me, right? I feel myself in this chair. I'm breathing good air. I am healthy here and now. I'm not thinking about the stressor from last week. I'm not worrying about the bills for next week. I'm right here. My mind and my heart are right here, right now. So keep your mind on the moment of the present. And then thirdly, I'd recommend, and this is focused on the body, and if you've watched the news lately, you've heard people talk about pandemic fatigue. So the third thing I'd recommend is to physically fight pandemic fatigue. Now, how do you do that? First of all, get a good night's sleep. Stop scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling on social media. Stop binging on Netflix through, the middle of the night. I know your favorite show just got back on there. Getting a good night's sleep on a regular basis is really important for mental health. As a matter of fact, if you want to make someone psychotic, deprive them of sleep. So some of us are walking around a little bit crazy, right? Because we haven't gotten enough sleep. And then exercise, right? When I'm seeing people, as a matter of fact, I said this to someone today in one of my sessions, we have to remember that yet we have a mind and we have a body, but it's connected by our neck and they work together, right? So what you do with your body is going to impact how you think and how you feel. So exercise. When we exercise, there are these chemicals in our brains called endorphins that give us a natural high, right? Give us a natural positive feeling. And endorphins also help us really to reduce even the effect of pain. So if you have chronic pain, it may feel intuitive to move, but if you get exercise, it can actually reduce the experience of pain and to some degree stress, anxiety, and depression. And when we move, we feel good, our self-esteem is up, and we look good. And relax. Part of the other thing our bodies really need outside of deep sleep is just moments of just pause. So take a commercial break. Sit down, give yourself 2 minutes and 2 seconds to sit and pause. Take a deep breath, inhale, exhale, give yourself a moment. And then fourthly, I'd say to grow in gratitude and in connection, right? So in a time like a pandemic, right, it's as if we have an avalanche in front of us and we just feel like we're not sure how we're going to get away from it. If you watch the news and look at the numbers every day, it can feel inevitable and people can sometimes feel like it's coming to get me, that the pandemic is literally coming at you. But to remember, first of all, that we don't know tomorrow, right? We are not walking around as gods and goddesses. We do know the past, but we cannot predict the future. And what we do know in the present, what we want to do is balance. Yes, there are a lot of really difficult things happening. A lot of people have gotten sick. Some of you have had your family members have become ill and maybe need to be hospitalized, as Dr. Geoffrey said. You may have even lost, a loved one. There may have been goals that you have had that you have not been able to fulfill in the time that you have wanted to. But what I always like to say is that the present is filled with the things that are disappointing and also filled with things that are positive. So keep a balance. Be very deliberate about looking for the small, medium, and large positive moments, right? And sometimes we have to be intentional about just even documenting them. Some people will do that through a journal. Some people journal, have a gratitude journal. And that's an opportunity to really document what's positive. And a gratitude journal is probably one of the most valuable tools you can use right now. If you're not a writer, perhaps you're a spiritual person and you pray. Make your prayer about documenting and bearing witness with your God about what he's giving you as far as a blessing. Or take some time to reach out to others, right? Reach out to others, certainly to talk about what your stressors are, but don't end that conversation without figuring out one thing that you're grateful for, even if it's just that person to be able to talk to. And speaking of that, the connections, we've got to really prioritize connecting and reaching out to our loved ones. We're used to kind of dropping by mom or dad's house or meeting up with friends. I've been so amazed at the way that people have been creative in the midst of this pandemic about how to get together with one another. I know we're all zoomed out, but some people have, I've seen some wonderful birthday celebrations and anniversaries on video. We've seen drive-bys. We've seen people getting together in socially distanced picnics when it was warmer, right? So we've been really intentional and creative about how to get together. And I think the other thing I would say, is to really use the gifts that are given to you and do everything that you can, to make a difference where you are. You don't have to necessarily be on television or in the newspaper, but when you give to another person based on what you have, that's going to make you feel good. And that's going to really reinforce the connection between the two of you. And that's universal. That's going to carry from this pandemic and way beyond. People after this pandemic are going to remember what you did to make their day. more than they'll remember the cough they had, more than they remember maybe even the pain. So don't forget to connect and give to each other. That's a wonderful gift.
Wow. You just preached a word. I'm just going to summarize the four things that you mentioned. And everyone, we're going to take questions. So please submit your questions as well. And by the way, nothing we say should be taken as medical advice. It's just medical information. Seek information from your primary care doctor. Number one, acknowledge your feelings, good or bad. 2, keep your mind on the present. Be mindful. 3, physically fight pandemic fatigue. One thing that you can do is get a good night's sleep. And then number 4, grow in gratitude and connection. You want to make sure that you constantly think about the good that is going on. Dr. Harris, did I pass the test?
I think you passed the test. I'll give you a bonus. And the bonus really is to use affirmations, which are short, simple, positive statements that really guard against negativity and really focus on being positive and empowering yourself. So it can be something really simple as, I am safe. It could be even more as, I have all I need to be the best I can be.
I love it.
Today, I intend to live a full life, because that, again, is focused on the present and focused on what you have and using your God-given talents to the fullest.
That was very good. So let me, while we're waiting for a few questions, what are your thoughts about what people can do for the holidays? And let me say this. I think that most people believe, and I kind of do, I've got to admit, the holidays are happy periods for most people. When in reality, there's a large number of people where the holidays it is a very difficult time. So you combine the holidays, you combine COVID, you combine being disconnected from often from your support system. What nuggets can you share?
Well, first of all, as I said, in terms of acknowledging what you feel both in the negative and the positive, as you said, for many people, the holidays are a difficult time. And this year, the holidays are going to be a difficult time for many people. We've had over 250,000 people die from COVID this year. There are going to be a lot of people in mourning during the holidays this year, right? So I think it's important for us to just acknowledge that loss will be part even more this year of the holidays, but that means that connection with others will be all the more important. So I think that that it's important to give people their space, right? Sometimes someone will feel like they need to be alone with their feelings, and that's okay. So that you reach out to people and say, I'm here if you need me. And I honor your time and your need by yourself. But I also encourage those, after you have that time by yourself, be intentional about connecting with others so that you nurture the relationships with those who are there with you now.
Wow, that was very helpful. I know just in my own life, one thing I do, and I think it goes along with the whole gratitude, before I get out of the bed every day, I say 5 things that I am grateful for. And mind you, people always think it's got to be pie in the sky, but in my studies about this, it can be as simple as I am thankful that I got a good night's sleep. I'm thankful that I have warm cup.
I inhaled and exhaled.
Exactly. And in other words, what you just said is there's always something to be thankful for.
Always.
Okay.
Always.
And then, let's just go to this, so there's an increased rate of suicide going on, or suicide attempts at least. And Dr. Breen, the emergency medicine physician who took her life back in April, she didn't have a previous psychiatric diagnosis. But one thing that they talked about was she had probably got caught up in this cycle of just negative thoughts. And that had somebody called her at the right time, or called her before this even happened, almost about anything, it would have broken that cycle and she perhaps would not have done it. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. I call that avalanching. I call it avalanching. So I live in the northeast of the US, where at this time of year it may begin to snow, and as it progresses, we get things like blizzards. But to your point, right, at this point in time, we have very real stressors with that, which I call kind of small, medium, large snowballs. But once we get to thinking about them, sometimes we grow them in our minds, right? And so for this physician and for many people who are on the front lines, what they're facing are very big things. That's not to minimize it, right? But what I can imagine happening for her is facing this very big stressor, which isn't enough in and of itself, but then imagining the next patient and the next patient and the next patient. And when we are unclear about what will happen for the future, sometimes what we do is actually predict it. So as she was imagining the next patient, having just faced maybe several patients who were very ill and many of them who have died. And this is what I mean about keeping the past in the past and not predicting the future and staying right there in the present. Because when you bring the past into that moment, those 5 patients that died that you couldn't help, and you start imagining those 10, 20, 30 patients in the future, and you imagine them dying as well, you can imagine how overwhelming that can feel and how much helplessness she may have felt at that moment, right? And that's the essence of what I mean. Keep the present in front of you, keep the past and the future at bay, and focus on what you have right there.
And it's funny you mentioned the helplessness, and you're the expert. I'm obviously not a psychiatrist, a psychologist, any of that. But the emails I get, some of them just kind of they touch my heart because I noticed that there's one. If I haven't done any studies, if I had to say that there's one main diagnosis going on out there, it's anxiety. But then the second one is there's a helplessness to this, like, what do I do? What do I do? What advice can you give? I know you gave us those like 4 pillars. What additional advice can you give for people who are feeling a little helpless, just straight up scared?
Right. You know, I think one of the first things I would suggest is to figure out what you have the capability to do and repeat that, over and over. I think sometimes when people are feeling helpless, it's because they're imagining only half of the possibility of the future. They're only imagining the negative possibilities. And what I always suggest to people is to balance your thoughts. Be very intentional about imagining what could negatively happen, because the future is possible for the negativity, and it's also possible for what is positive that can happen. And so most people, when they're feeling anxious, they're lopsided. They've got only the negative thoughts swirling and swirling in their minds. But if you can think of an equal and opposite positive thought relative to that negative thought, then you're really truly accurately thinking about the future, because the future is full of both what is negative and worrisome and what is positive and exciting and potentially joy fulfilling.
You have a very soothing voice, so I can so I am sure that your patients really appreciate that as well. I just want to say hi to a couple of Eve Rogers Key, what's going on? Angela Pinckney, Vincent Crawford says the New York schools are shutting down again. Hey, I don't think that's unreasonable. Gene Bailey, what's going on? How are you? Mr. Cruz Sherman, who has the radio show in Richmond, and Cruz Sherman talks about taking the vitamin D and zinc. Absolutely. And then Angela Pinckney writes, "Thank God for excellence and Black leadership. Dr. Varner, Dr. Shepard, my sister on here today, and so many more. My family appreciate y'all." Angela, I am glad that you appreciate us. Leadership during this period of time is absolutely key. What I would say is that I find it interesting that I see people on TV giving medical advice, but I don't see people who look like Dr. Harris on TV giving medical advice. And the reason why that's important follow me. It's not a racial matter. It's just a matter that it's a general principle that people tend to follow those who look like them. And given we're in a pandemic and it's impacting Black folks in a disproportionate manner, you would expect to see more Black folks on the national news. Let me be clear: a person of color is different from a Black person. Both of them equal in God's eyes, so I'm not even saying that. So Angela, your comments warm our hearts. Dr. Harris, do you have anything you want to comment as it relates to that?
Yes, actually, I would like to point out a service that a colleague of mine here in the Boston area has just developed. Her name is Dr. Charmaine Jackman, and she developed an online network called innopsych.com. And if you are looking for a person of color therapist anywhere in the United States, you can find them through her network. And again, that's innopsych, INOPSYCH.com. That's a wonderful resource for finding a person of color therapist.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you because you and I talked prior to this, and while most people, 99% of my views come in the replay, our goal was simply to touch one person. If we can make one person feel better, and just based upon just a few comments, I can already tell you that we succeeded in that. If we can just make one person feel better, get them to the next day, then I've got a feeling that whatever God people serve is happy with us. Now, my question to you is: if you had to give one more piece of advice,
we're doing our part.
That's so true, because we're all in this together. We all have to do our part because we've never seen this in life. So we all have to play a special part. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think you just hit on it. You were saying we have never seen this in life. And so the other thing I found myself as a clinician saying to people often lately is have compassion for yourself. We are all doing this for the first time. None of us knows the exact answer on how to get through this. This is a great big international experiment. But if we all do our best in this moment, if we know that we're going to make mistakes along the way, right? But we're also going to learn a lot along the way. I would say to just have compassion for yourself and know that you're doing your best. And if something doesn't work out, know that you're learning from it and you're going to do better in the next moment. And that this is not going to last forever. That I am not saying I know, I'm not the fortune teller. As I was saying to us, but I feel very strongly that this is not going to last forever. And even in this moment, what is occurring is very difficult, is very stressful, but there are many blessings, many positive things that are happening. People are falling in love. People are starting businesses. People are helping one another. People are blessing one another. This has been also a great opportunity for the wealth of humanity to show its greatness. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for you providing this forum for us to really talk about this.
Well, Dr. Harris, on behalf of the citizens of the United States of America, all of us, we thank you for your service. We thank you for what you're doing. We actually thank you for making us feel better tonight as well.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, everyone, again, I thank you very much for joining us. And just keep in mind, putting on my clinical hat, 97% of us are going to be just fine, even if we get COVID. For those of us who go to Vegas, or those of us who even bet, 97% is a great number. And Dr. Harris said something. She said that she knows that this is going to be just fine. And let me say this. And for those of you all who don't have any God in you, or who don't have a God, or who don't believe in God, you may not follow this. In fact, I didn't know you were coming. But the reason why we know everything's going to be okay is because think back to a time in your life. We have all had it, where there was a crisis or some painful moment. You weren't sure how you were going to get through it. 100% of the time, you always got through it. How do I know? You're watching this right now. So 100% of the time, we're always going to be just fine. And for those of you all who like don't have a God, I got some data, and I already talked about it. 97% of us will be just fine. We just have to hold on, stay faithful, and I can tell you this one little bit. Help someone else out. Call someone. Do something kind for them. Just do something for someone else, and it's going to make you feel better. Dr. Harris, again, thank you for all that you do. And I would encourage you all to, would you give us that website again for your friend who has the new business?
Yes, it is Dr. Charmaine Jackman, and the website is www.innopsych.com.
I put it in there. And so also, in case, just to let you all know, I think you already followed me. The 3 vitamins they're very important for you to take: vitamin D, zinc, and melatonin. I attach a bit.ly to this that you should be able to easily pull up, and it gives you that information. I would encourage you to share it. Everything that I present to you in that download that you will have, it's from evidence-based data. Most information that I give you comes from evidence-based, peer-reviewed information. If it's not that, I will tell you that. Hey, everyone, be safe, be kind, and do something nice for someone, and we will see you soon. Thank you, Dr. Harris.
Bye-bye.